Hello. Please don't start interpreting yet. This is just an introduction. In my speech today, I'm going to talk about cruise ships and their impact on the environment. There aren't too many difficult words. I'm going to mention Montjuïc, which is a hill in Barcelona, and the Sagrada Familia, as well as Hurtigruten, a cruise company, and LNG. My speech will begin now. Ladies and gentlemen, a few years ago, my family and I visited Barcelona. We decided to go up to the top of Montjuïc so that we could see the fortress and admire the view of the coast, the monuments like the Sagrada Familia, and the hills in the distance. What we didn't expect, however, was the huge number of cruise ships in the harbour which dominated the view. These huge ships made of iron, glass and plastic were polluting the air with their dirty black smoke and completely ruined the view. When we think about environmental pollution, we generally think about cars or planes, but cruise ships are actually much worse than both of these forms of transport. The emissions caused by a medium-sized cruise ship are the equivalent of those of 12,000 cars. The worst thing is that the demand for this type of transport continues to rise, and that means that there are more and more cruise ships polluting our atmosphere. So why are cruise ships so bad for the environment? First of all, they emit tons and tons of CO2, and as we all know, that contributes to global warming. Cruise ships also produce sulfur dioxide, or more sulfur dioxide than cars even. In 2022 alone, there were 218 cruise ships on EU waters, and they emitted the same amount of sulfur dioxide as 1 million cars. Sulfur dioxide is very bad for the environment because it contributes to acid rain and deforestation. The second problem with cruise ships is waste. Just imagine the quantity of waste caused by these swimming small cities with their hotels, restaurants, pools, cinemas and shops. Cruise ships burn the majority of their waste, which of course contributes to air pollution. Recycling is not very common, and often the waste is just thrown directly into the sea. There are also no general regulations on sewage disposal. In some areas, the waste is just thrown untreated into the sea. And this all has terrible impacts on ecosystems and marine life. The third problem with cruise ships is probably less well known, and that's noise pollution. This can damage the marine flora and fauna. Many sea creatures like whales, seals, or fish use sound for many vital activities, and so changes to the background noise can have negative impacts on these animals. So you're probably wondering what the industry is currently doing to improve its environmental record. The greatest challenge for the industry is to reduce their dependency on fossil fuels. Some cruise ship companies want to switch to more environmentally sustainable fuels by using liquefied natural gas, or LNG. LNG produces less air pollution, but it's still bad for the environment. LNG produces methane, and the warming effects of methane are 80 times those of CO2. So this is only a small progress. However, there is a glimmer of hope. By 2025, Hurtigruten, which is a Norwegian cruise ship company, has reduced its CO2 emissions by 25%, and it's banned the use of single-use plastic. It's also developed an emissions-free engine, which should be implemented on the Norwegian coastline by 2030. So after hearing my speech, you might be wondering whether I myself will now go on one of these environmentally friendly cruises. The answer is probably not, because I don't really fancy being stuck on a boat for days on end. However, if you still fancy a cruise ship holiday, perhaps you could opt for a more environmentally sustainable option like that of Hurtigruten, because ultimately the fate of the cruise ship industry lies in the hands of us consumers. Thank you.